If you think you're stressed by the amount of data you have to worry about and study now, wait till we come to the exaflood, where literally every day an exabyte, a million gigabytes of data is flowing through the system and trying to be understood. I mean, to the degree that you're thinking about scientification, you're going to want some of those ninjas on your staffs to figure it out, because the pressure for you to make sense of it, understand it, act on it, and it will be valuable. And there will be ways that you can learn things from it that will transform your business in real time. But it's an environment that is evolving, where, again, the social norms, the technological norms, the etiquette norms, the company norms, the legal environment is very much up in the air. And yet it's happening. There are fields now in Alabama that have sensors buried in them that are the data on those sensors are uploaded to satellites that tell farmers who own those fields how much moisture there is in their soil, so when they have to irrigate, and what the pH content of the soil is when they have to add fertilizer to it. There are cows walking around Spain now with RFID devices in their ears, and where their owners can track where the cows go, what they eat, where they've been, when they get sick, what their body weight is, and things like that. I'm sorry to tell you, but the pace of change is accelerating. You ain't seen nothing yet, and maybe that's a way to end my talk and turn this over to Robin and Omar. Thank you.
Our next two speakers are first responders to Lee. I want you to be very kind to them. I actually approached them today at 12:15 and asked them if they would mind taking the stage. They're from Toronto, so I just think they really wanted to come back next year, so they said yes to get out of the snow. I'd like to welcome Robin Hassan from Starcom to the stage, and Omar Khan from Leo Burnett in Canada. Robin is going to respond from the perspective of her role in connections planning, and Omar's from content creation. Thank you.
It's good to be here, guys. I was just joking with Robin that I think we got picked because we're Canadians and we'd say yes. So there you go. So very interesting talk by Lee, fascinating, and just even for me on the agency side, being a digital planner and also managing a few of the accounts, there's so much information that it can overwhelm someone who's in the know as well. And so from my perspective, which is thinking about content creation, I try to take a more channel agnostic type of a viewpoint, and how do I in my role make sense of the changing landscape. There are three building blocks for me that I always turn back to, even though the landscape is changing. One of them being, business strategy and insights. So really surrounding yourselves with smart people like the ones that were here today, attending conferences, obviously, looking at research, looking at listening tools and deploying them, understanding where your audiences are, what matters to them, what are they talking about, so you get a sense of where you need to be and not get frazzled by the crazy amounts of information and different platforms that are happening. The other thing that really comes to mind is thinking about metrics. I think it's very important, and Brendan Moorcroft, who had the pleasure of working with at Organic a couple of years ago, mentioned it last night, earlier today as well, which is we need numbers. Our clients are looking at us and they're holding us, they want us to be accountable. So what are the ways that we can agree upon certain metrics? And I know that it's a challenge for us on the agency side, because the landscape is changing so fast that some of the metrics just, we're constantly having to retweak. So we'll have to set those objectives and those metrics to really figure out what does success look like. I think the other piece being content strategy, more and more as I'm really planning for a lot of the big accounts in Canada. On the CPG side, you need one-to-one communication and engagement, and that requires a lot of late nights and really figuring out what type of communications brands can put out there so they're not really looking like brands, but they're really engaging at that level, and that requires community management, a lot of engagement from that perspective. The other building block is creative. We need creative for brands that, that really stand for conviction and purpose. I think without that, it would be very difficult. So that's another building block for me, every time I look at presentations like that, I try and not get too overwhelmed by it, because I'm like, I need my strategy and the insights relevant to my clients' needs and what they're looking for and what the target audience is, where they are. I need great creative that's going to be engaging, that's going to have an entertainment value where it makes sense. There's a value add, and the last thing being that, obviously we need to play where the old cliche, fish where the fish are. I think that's important, and really testing and learning. A lot of the stuff that we see out here, you sometimes in your brand plans for the year, like for 2011, I've placed a bet on Facebook as an example, and I'm telling the client, let's take one of your 14 brands and focus exclusively on Facebook. Let's see how the results come out. We've got a shared set of metrics that we've agreed upon, and then based on the results, we can optimize and then use and go forward accordingly. So really what I'm trying to say is, I don't think anything is going to get replaced. When radio came out, people were thinking print is dead, or when TV was going to replace radio. No, the pie just gets smaller. So my takeaway from all of this is definitely stay on top of the key trends and learnings, but really go back to your building blocks of your business strategy. What's the creative? Does it have a conviction and purpose? And really make sure that your client's up to speed and educated enough to make the right decisions with you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robin Hassan, and I work very closely with Omar on one of our CPG clients in Canada. And it's going to make it's critical to my first point, and one of the things I've been thinking about, listening to all the presentations and definitely through Lee's presentation, is the importance of integrated marketing thinking and how core it is to our success as media planners and buyers. Especially when it comes to connections planning. And the way we look at it is Omar sort of looks at what are we going to say to consumers, and on the connections planning side, we're thinking more, on my team, we're thinking more on how are we going to get them, how are we going to engage those consumers, where are they in the mix. And some of the things that are feeding into the importance of integrated marketing thinking being so key to our success as media planners is looking at media blending, so looking at the role of earned media, paid media, and owned media, and how is that going to affect our KPIs? Clients have, they want everything under the sun. They know there's tons of metrics that are out there. I don't know if any of you were in the earlier B session. There was a lot of conversation about click-through and how that fits into the grand scheme of things and how it might be actually not driving a client's business. I think our big core focus needs to be around helping marketers and our clients determine what's the most important metrics, and sort of integrated marketing is key to that. The second is, and I do love the term scientification that Terry came up with earlier today. I'd actually say beware the scientification of the ad space and where we're going. There is so much going on, from mobile, which hasn't really garnered as much adoption in Canada, so we're not doing tons of work there. But in terms of social, in terms of the platform fragmentation that's out there, it's definitely a core issue for us. To Omar's point, being really solid on your strategy and what your client's trying to do in the digital space is so critical. And it'll make it much easier for you to wade through why something's important and why some things are just not important. You really don't need to talk about that. You don't need to talk about everything at the very least. And the third is, because there's so much that needs to be done in the space, having stronger and deeper relationships with your suppliers, your partners, especially the ones that do have the capability of creating content and engaging experiences with consumers. To Omar's point around fish where the fish are, it's something that we say all the time at Starcom in Canada. The reality is, clients' budgets aren't growing, we all know that, but we're trying to do so much more in so many different places. So how can you leverage the dollars that you have with your partners? Obviously, there's a cost of production as well, but how do you leverage that to make sure you're picking one or two really strong partnerships that help you deliver ultimately against your goals? And then finally, the last thing I'll leave everyone with is, because of the fragmentation that we live with, and this is where actually my team and myself spend most of our time, and with partners, so agency partners like Omar, is helping clients focus on what they should be evaluating and what's most important to them. It really doesn't have anything to do with blocking shorts or planning media, but it helps us do our jobs better ultimately in the long term, and helps make planning for 2011, 2012, 2013 with fragmentation continuing to be the way that it is, setting our role with them clearly is going to be key. Thank you for your time.